Hello, Year 10. This is lesson 9, which is about acting skills. Now, I've tried to stay away from acting skills for most of the time. However, we are going to have a little look at how we would write about acting skills today. So, the learning objective is to learn how to communicate a role to an audience and create a character for performance. By the end of this lesson, I should be able to know and understand various acting skills that are used by a performer, explain and justify how acting skills can be used to communicate a role and how they can be used to create a character, and answer a 6-mark exam question. Now, everything we learned today is about writing for your exam, about how to write about that creation of character and how to communicate that role. So what are acting skills? Acting skills are split up really into two main categories, vocal and physical. So thinking about physical acting skills, first of all, the list I have on the side is not limited to these words, but these are the most of the physical skills that you should be thinking about when performing. So posture, do I have a tall upright posture, or do I have a slouched over posture? So posture is everything from your waist up and about really how you're standing or sitting. Gesture is anything you do with your hands. If that's a thumbs up, if that's a wave. Facial expression, so that's anything you do with your face. How do you have an aggressive facial expression? How do you have a happy facial expression? How do you have a sad facial expression? Tension is the amount of tension that you put through your body. So think about your arm and just waving your arm in the air. Now, if you were to do that really loosely and let your arm flop about everywhere, you would probably have very little tension. However, if you managed to hold on to your arm nice and tight and still waved it in the air, but it wasn't flapping everywhere, you probably say that you had a high level of tension. Eye contact is your eye contact as a performer with other performers on the stage and with the audience. So, for example, if you were standing there with fiddling with your hands in front of your waist almost, and your feet were facing in with each other, and you were looking down at the floor with your eyes, you'd probably look maybe a little bit nervous. However, if you were looking someone directly, staring them straight in the face, well, those two different eye contacts there mean two different things, and they're communicating something different to an audience. Proxemics, remember, proxemics is the distance between characters that show us the relationship. So if they were stood on stage really far apart, it would probably tell us that they don't really know each other, or it's a professional relationship, or they do know each other, but they don't really like each other, and it's best for them to stay apart. However, if they were really close together, maybe it was a guy and a girl, and the guy had his arm over the girl, and they had a small proxemics, very close proxemics, this could mean that they were in love, maybe. A physical mannerism. This is something that you do with your body that is a habit. So I have a physical mannerism that many people have picked up, that I tap my foot quite often, and sometimes I don't even know that I'm doing it. So that's a physical mannerism, it's a habit. Pace. So pace usually comes in when we are walking. So if I was walking really slowly, we would say that I had a slow pace. However, if I walked really, really fast, we could say that I had a fast pace. The last one is gait, which is the distance between the legs. Think about a horse galloping cross country, maybe, and think about the distance between their legs. Now, this is called the gait. So if I walked shuffling along the floor, not really moving my feet that wide apart at all, we could say that I had a very small gait. However, if I was walking along the floor, really stretching my legs out, we might say that I had a large gait. So pace and gait you could actually use together. So you could walk with a medium pace with a large gait, for example. Vocal, so vocal is everything to do with the voice. There are 5 main vocal words that you should know off the top of your head, which is pitch, pace, pause, tone, and volume. I've also put accent and mannerism, as those two are important for this play. So pitch is how high or how low your voice is. Pace, you can talk at a really, really fast pace like this, or you can talk at a really, really slow pace. Pause is just like that. Pauses can be used for many effects. You might stop if you wanted to draw the audience's attention to something, for example. Tone. Now, you must include the adjectives of tone. So it's tone of voice. You might have a really, really happy tone of voice, or you might have a really aggressive and angry tone of voice. Volume, you can either have a loud volume, really, really loud, or you could have a really, really quiet volume. Accent. Now, there are various accents. You could have a Scottish accent, you could have a Welsh accent, you could have a Hampshire accent. Accent is the way that you speak from different parts of the country or the world. And a vocal mannerism, like with the physical mannerism, it is a habit. So saying yeah, you understand, yeah, that's a mannerism. A touch, that's a vocal mannerism. Okay, apparently I say okay all the time. That's also a vocal mannerism. It's a habit. So I've attached into the files on Show My Homework. This is the big sheet. You will need this. Now this has all of the keywords that you need for GCSE drama. You can see in the picture on the screen that it's got a voice column. Column, sorry. But also you can see I've got character action. Both of those are sort of the physical acting skills. If you don't know what a word means, either message me and ask me if you want to try to use it, which I would really like you to try to use something I've not told you about, or you could use Google. You will also need this sheet. This is the adjective bank. So for example, if you were thinking about voice, and you would pick one word from this sheet, which could be tone, for example, and you would pick one word from this sheet, which could be harsh, and you'd put them together and create a harsh tone of voice. Harsh being the adjective, tone of voice being that key word. You'll probably need those from this point forwards. So Missing Dan Nolan offers a number of vocal choices for the performers. Actors will need to decide if they are going to adopt a Hampshire accent for the characters or make another regional choice. If multi-rolling, a performer might need to decide how their voice changes, for example, from a teenager to an adult. When we're talking about accents, say for example a Hampshire accent, because you're only writing about this play, you don't necessarily need to describe what a Hampshire accent sounds like. A Hampshire accent would be perfectly suitable in the way you're writing it like that. We've also moved on to our second success criteria now, which is to be able to explain and justify how acting skills can be used to communicate a role and how they can be used to create a character. So your first task then, you will see on the sheet that I've attached, task 1, I would like you to fill in the grid. Now you have Dan, Sarah, Greg, Claire and Pauline. For each of those characters, you are going to find a vocal skill. So for example, tone of voice, volume, accent, mannerism. And you are going to then fill in about when and where the vocal skill could be displayed, and details and justifications. You can see I've left you one example, so please do that now. So physical skills and Missing Dan Nolan. Physical skills are particularly important in Missing Dan Nolan due to its non-naturalistic style. Mark Wheeler states at the beginning of the play that performers should use physical theatre throughout. Also, because of the non-naturalistic style, one of the techniques that might be used is multi-rolling. So if you were playing a teenager 1 minute and an adult the next minute, how would you show that using your physical acting skills? If you were playing Greg or you were playing a police officer, Greg's quite an informal character. We see Greg as Greg, but the police officer is a professional job role. what difference would you have, particularly in the way that they stand and move with those characters? So again, like you did with the vocal acting skills, I would like you to fill in the sheet for the physical acting skills. So for each character listed on the grid, I would like you to give me one example of how they could use their physical skills in the play and justify each of your choices. So we're now going to move on to the exam question. Now, this is my favourite exam question. Actual fact, I think this is the easiest exam question in the paper if it comes up. Now, it would look something similar to this. Now, this is a 6-mark exam question. On the right-hand side of your screen, I've taken a screenshot of the exam paper so you can see what the whole thing would look like. On the left-hand side, I've kind of zoomed into the question at the top. Now, we know that this is a 6-mark exam question. It says right down here in the bottom, you can see I've circled it in red. It's got a number 6, which means if it's 6 marks and there are 6 boxes, that's 1 mark per box. So when you're writing in these boxes, really think about the amount you are writing for 1 mark. It's 1 mark per box, that's all you're getting, no matter whether you write an essay or a couple of words that does the job. So really think about that. So the question that we're going to look at, not the question you are answering, is this. Select the character from the performance text you have studied. So you're going to find Missing Dan Nolan and they want us to talk about Greg. Complete the table below by listing 3 ways in which an actor could use their voice to portray this character. Justify your choices with examples from the performance text you have studied. So I'm not going to break down the question. We've done that plenty of times before. However, it's on screen so you can see. Now, the first thing you need to do in this situation is understand the question, right? I know I've got to talk about 3 ways that I have to use my voice. I can talk about any moment from the text as long as I justify it. Now, the headings of the boxes are actually really nice in this particular question. It says use of voice, which we know is the skill, and justification. However, in some examples, they don't make it that simple and that easy for us. So the first thing you need to do is when you see these boxes is to identify, right, which one is the justification, which one is the skill. So in this case, it's swapped around. That one's the skill, that one's the justification. Okay, so for example, in the skill, if that was still about voice, I would put harsh tone of voice, and that's how I'm communicating it. Yeah, remember that. And the justification is the aspect of the character. So we might say Greg is angry in this particular moment. So the aspect is that anger, and the way I'm going to communicate that is by using a harsh tone of voice or an aggressive tone of voice. Okay, so the first thing you need to do after breaking down the question is figure out which is the justification box, which is the skill box. So let's go back to the original question, which is this. Select the character from the performance text you've studied. Complete the table below by listing 3 ways in which an actor could use their voice to portray this character. Justify your choices with examples from the performance text you have studied. So I gave you a keyword sheet and an adjective sheet. Now on this example, all of the keywords are in green and the adjectives are in red. So you can see how I've used them together. So use of voice, loud, volume. That would be perfectly acceptable and I would get 1 mark for that. The next box down, sad and emotional, they're my adjectives, tone of voice. That would also be perfectly acceptable. I would get 1 mark for that. So nice and easy, 2 marks. So some ways that you could use keywords that aren't quite the right way. So loud voice. Okay, well that does make sense, but you won't get the mark for it because you've not used the key word, which is volume. Okay, so loud, volume is important. I've given you 2 not quite right examples in the second box, which is a sad and emotional tone. Tone's a funny one. Whenever you're talking about tone, you always have to say of voice. Make that very, very clear. So if that had of voice, that would be acceptable. But just because I've put tone, that wouldn't be acceptable. Uh, the next one down, which is sad and emotional voice, again, that wouldn't be acceptable because I haven't got that keyword in there, tone. It needs to be sad and emotional tone of voice. You also, another one that I've seen a few times with people doing, I've not written it down, but I'm sure you can listen to me and understand, is where they would put as the use of voice, tone of voice. That's all they would write. Well, that also doesn't work because you have to put the adjective there as well and tell them what tone of voice it is. So having a look at my justification then, I've given you one example. So my use of voice is a loud volume. Now I need to justify this. The loud volume would be effective in showing his panic when he asks Tom if he knows where Dan is. Tom is standing at the top of the stairs and Greg at the bottom. That is absolutely perfect as a justification. I would receive 1 mark for the loud volume, 1 mark for the justification. I've got 2 marks, okay? So now it's your turn. So on the task sheet that I gave you, you will see task 3. This is your exam question. Select and name a character from the performance text you have studied. Name of character. Complete the boxes below to briefly describe 3 ways an actor playing this character could use physicality for their performance. Give a justified example for each using the selected character. So I'm going to leave you with that exam question. Obviously, there's 6 boxes. I've just cut it off so you can see the exam question. Do that and send it over to me. So just before we finish the lesson then, to learn how to communicate a role to an audience and create a character for performance. By the end of this lesson, I should be able to know and understand various acting skills that are used by a performer. So we've spoken about acting skills, specifically the key words that you need to know to write about this in the exam. Explain and justify how acting skills can be used to communicate a role and how they can create a character. You should have done that by experimenting with the task 1 and task 2. And the final thing that you should have done is answer a 6-mark exam question relating to acting skills.